Good morning, people. This is where I am. It's called Blackwater Woods. And this place that I'm going to walk into now is called the Tall Trees Trail. I was looking on ChatGPT for like good places to go for a walk, and it recommended here. And I'd been down this road before, but I didn't really have my bearings of where it was. And I didn't really realize how close it was to where I lived. It's about 20 minutes or something. So I came for a walk. And I've just been coming here every Saturday morning. I think this is maybe the third week or the fourth week. So this is where it is. The Tall Trees Trail. And you can see why it's got that name. Because the trees are absolutely massive. So they've got some absolute monstrous trees around here. I was going to Google it. The internet's not very good here. And I feel like if I start going on my phone, I just get drawn into it. But the trees here, when I saw it, I just felt like crying. I can't explain why. Right, you're going to see it now. Of course, when I first saw this, my initial thought was, I need to go and touch that tree. The thing that surprised me is that that isn't hard. It's actually soft. And I thought that was a bit weird. I'm not joking. It's like it's kind of got a soft outer layer. This one looks different. This one's soft as well. I don't know why that is. So I think these trees are Sequoia trees, and they're not native to this area. Last time I was walking around here, why I was saying I get sucked into my phone is because I just spent the whole time walking, reading about the history of this area and how it used to be, all of the New Forest used to be owned by the monarch, and then they sold parts of it, and now it's like a forestry commission, and what this area was used for. There's little signs dotted about that kind of sparked my interest about it. I kind of find this place a bit weird because there's no people, there's nothing happening, and then we've just got these trees that are like, I think that one's like 170 years old. And then there's also a history of what people had been doing in this area and what this area was used for. And I think that we've just got so much more around us than we know about. This is the kind of place where people say good morning to each other. But in 400 years, this might be like where I live right now. You've just got all these people sort of climbing over each other to try and fucking sort themselves out. What all of this points to is just how much depth there is to what's around us, what we experience, what we could know. There's just so much depth to what there is and what there could be. When you get caught in just what you think is around you, you miss most of what there is, because what all these other things, they are part of what there is. If your perspective is always on the problems or on the small inconveniences, that easily becomes your life. But there's actually so much more to it, and there's different ways to experience those problems, and there's a depth in understanding about yourself and how you react to problems. I don't know if these kind of connections seem obvious to other people, But this is what walking here has made me think. So a friend of mine, who I've known for about 10 years, I got a phone call from someone else the other day saying that this guy had been killed. I don't know the ins and outs of the details, but he was killed and found in a river in Uganda. And my initial reaction was just shock. And my body didn't even know what to do. I said to my mate that rang me, I don't know whether to laugh or cry. Like, I just had no kind of good understanding of what to do. What do you do? And so that was kind of with me for the rest of the day. And then I overheard someone talking about the trains being late. And I just heard that and thought, maybe it doesn't matter if the train's late, because which one's worse? And if the train is late and that's your whole thing today, that's your whole experience, we can make the train being late infinitely more worse than it actually is. Oh, the fucking train and this and that. Whereas the train being late in relation to someone getting killed and thrown in a river in Uganda, it doesn't seem that bad. And I think that this is part of the problem of the human condition, and particularly has been an issue for me, that we kind of just look at what's in front of us. We experience that. That seems like all that there is. But when you start to ask different questions, or speak to different people, or see things through a different lens, there's much more to it. There's more depth. Over the last few weeks, I've been speaking to someone for counselling. One of the things that they've been helping me with is to actually feel what's happening in my body when I react to situations. And that sounds really basic, but when she was asking me questions saying, how did that make you feel? And I'm like, I don't really even know what you mean by how did it make me feel. She's like, how did it feel in your body? What did it physically feel like? And I'm like, well, I don't really know. Never really noticed. So then she asked me to start trying to notice it. And what I noticed was that my toes would be clenched, my forearms would be tense, shoulders are tense. And this was just kind of one of the symptoms of tension in the body, right? But what it's helped me with is that I've started to realize, like, when these reactions are kind of taking control of me. So the way to think about it is like, these small inconveniences, if they affect you, like, then you're kind of leaving the control of your life up to what happens to you, which is probably not a very good deal, because it just means that you're constantly at the mercy of every single small thing that happens to you. The more that you care about something, the more it controls you. I just found that all these small things that would annoy me, and I didn't really know how to emotionally regulate myself. So this thing to do with feeling what's going on in your body is grounding. So it's coming back to what there is, breathing, feeling what is actually there. And so I've found that I've just got better at doing that over the last 6 to 8 weeks. And it's helped me a lot, purely because most of what we interact with is these small inconveniences. The train's late, something happens. They're kind of like micro-stressors. And if we don't know how to regulate our emotions well in those situations, I think that we're just in this constant state of being like sort of thrown around emotionally. So we had a conversation about my friend who had died yesterday. And I was saying that I think that that's the first person I've known who's died where I've actually been able to think about it properly. And I don't mean that I've fucking solved life or that it doesn't affect me, because it 100% does. In the past, I've either been too young, too drugged up, not mature enough. Something's happened and I'm just like, have a flat response to it. But because I'm starting to understand more about how I feel in different situations, when I heard that news, it made me feel a lot of different things. And it just made me think about how I've processed things in the past and how the way that you react to small things is very connected to the way that you react to bigger things. Because what I found is that I'd had a lot of the classic childhood trauma, which I think if you talk to most people have had some version of that. And I was reading about how it's connected to emotional dysregulation. And I don't know everything about this, but it just kind of resonated. And what I'd experienced is that when large traumatic events had happened, that my emotional response was quite flat, and that I didn't really have a good understanding of things. And I never really like properly processed some of these things, I think. And what the way this manifested was that in small interactions, I had an oversized reaction to them. So in big events, I had an underreaction. In small events, I had an overreaction. And basically in the last few months, where I've been trying to feel more the kind of day-to-day situations, and then this big thing's happened, my initial response was just shock, like freeze, to my friend dying. I then started to think about how I'd processed things like that in the past. And I think what happened is that where this happened so early on in my life, that I never really developed the right kind of skills to like properly manage my emotions in big situations. And as a result, they were also fucked in terms of small situations. I had this conversation yesterday, and I thought it was very good. I thought it helped me a lot. And the lady I was talking to just said, there's just much more depth to what you're feeling now. And I was like, yeah, there is. It's not so flat. It's not so empty in the reaction to big things. It's actually, that does actually make me feel something. When I was thinking about this, depending on what age the trauma happens, how can that affect a child? And that's a whole rabbit hole of what has developed in your brain by a certain age when trauma occurs and how that affects your development. The thing which the lady said to me was like, when something bad happens when you're a kid, like you're then looking to what the other adults in your life, the way they react. And that's why I developed a drug addiction and didn't talk about anything, because that was totally normal. And I don't think consciously thought, yeah, do you know, it'd be good if I didn't talk about this and if I just started doing drugs. Obviously. Now, I had kind of no intention of talking about all of this today, but it's just this place. There's the tree again, the big boy. And I've left some details out of that intentionally, You can share what you feel comfortable sharing, but I hope that what I've shared could help someone, and that's kind of the point in talking about. So I hope that there's maybe a small bit there that someone can take something from. I think the sign that I'm about to come past is one of the things that made me start asking the question about this. So I'll show you it. This enclosure, bank and ditch dates from 1848. So they had this thing. Since the Middle Ages, enclosure banks and ditches were built to exclude cattle, ponies and deer from the trees being grown for timber. Right? That's what this was. Timber. And they used that to stop the animals getting past. That obviously got me thinking, you know, what else? What other kind of shit were they doing in here? Because, you know, I've got some questions now that you've brought this up. And that got me thinking about all of that stuff. That made me think maybe there's more to what's in front of us. Because, I'm sorry, but to me that just looks like normal woods with this path down the middle of it. That bit of dirt with that wooden thing on the top doesn't say to me they were growing timber here in the 1800s and that kept the animals out. And then there's a whole layers to that itself if you want to ask the right questions and look into it. Layers. And how did they know that? Where did that information come from? And what did they do with that? What did they use animals for? What did they use the trees for? A lot of our experiences are abstracted. You go and rent a flat, an apartment, a house, right? You don't need to know how any of that works. How does the sewage, the electrics, the water, you don't need to understand any of it. So much of what is around us is just, we interface with it in this abstract or abstracted way where there's absolutely no need for you to understand how concrete or tarmac is made or how tarmac is laid. You just drive down it. But if you do want to ask more questions, there's more depth. This is kind of what I'm getting at, and this is what this place has made me think about, because that pattern of asking questions and digging deeper is an analogy to doing it within your life, the way you experience things, your emotions, your response to things. What the fuck is that? See, that's probably a whole nother thing. So I'll take a photo of that and ask ChatGPT what the fuck that is. So yeah, I hope that made sense. And I highly recommend coming here for a walk. Just be prepared to have your mind blown.